The rain poured relentlessly as I stood on the street corner, alone and vulnerable. I shivered, both from the cold and the anxious anticipation of my late-night Uber ride. I needed to get home quickly, away from the eeriness of the night. Finally, a car pulled up, and I hurriedly climbed into the back seat. The driver, a middle-aged man with a plastered smile, greeted me with a falsely friendly tone. Unease tingled through me, but I dismissed it as my own paranoia, trying to reassure myself that everything would be fine. Initially, we made small talks about why I was heading home so late. I just had a fight with my boyfriend and could no longer stay the night as previously planned, but that's a whole different story. As we drove longer, the driver's behavior grew increasingly unsettling. He made inappropriate comments, leering at me through the rearview mirror. A chill ran down my spine, and my heart raced with apprehension. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, silently praying for the ride to be over soon. The driver abruptly deviated from the familiar route, taking us deeper into a maze of dimly lit backstreets. Panic surged within me, my mind desperately searching for an escape plan. The fear really started to tighten up in me. Summoning the last shreds of courage, I spoke up.
"Excuse me, this isn't the way to my destination. Please, turn around and take me back to the main road."
The driver's lips curled into a grin, revealing the sudden change of sinister expression. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he sneered. "I have a special place in mind just for you." My heart raced, pounding against my chest. I was filled with terror as I realized the danger I was in. I frantically searched for my phone, praying for some signal to call for help, but it still remained out of reach. As the car continued to speed down unfamiliar streets, my fear escalated. Thoughts of escape consumed my mind, but I was trapped in this metal cage of a car towards an unknown fate. I had to find a way out, and I didn't want to become another statistic in the police records. With desperation fueling my actions, I seized the moment of distraction as the driver focused on the road ahead. I lunged forward, clawing at the door handle, hoping for an escape. To my relief, the door swung open, and adrenaline surged through me. Without hesitation, I hurled myself out of the moving vehicle, feeling the impact of the fall and the sting of rain on my skin. The driver's startled cry echoed behind me as I tried to get back on my feet. I sprinted through the rain-soaked streets, my heart pounding. Fear led me to run faster, to outrun whatever was chasing me. The sound of the car's engine faded into the distance as I found refuge in a well-lit area. Breathless and shaken, I sought help from a nearby convenience store, explaining the horrifying ordeal to the people inside. They offered comfort and called the authorities, promising to keep me safe until help arrived. The police arrived swiftly, launching a search for the deranged driver who had intended to do me harm. It was a close call. If you find yourself in a similar situation, trust your instincts. Be assertive and do whatever you can to ensure your safety. As for the driver, the authorities eventually apprehended him. According to the police, he did not have a prior, but it didn't mean I was his first victim either. He might have simply gotten away with it before. I was glad I made his apprehension possible, but also not glad that it was me who went through the ordeal. It was a small victory, but it wouldn't erase the trauma this incident inflicted on me. It was a dark and stormy night, and I had just finished my late-night shift at work. Eager to get home and escape the pouring rain, I called for an Uber. As I stood on the corner of the deserted street, anxiously waiting, the sound of approaching headlights broke through the gloom. Relief washed over me as I climbed into the back seat of the car. To my surprise, the driver was a woman. I had never had a female Uber driver this late before, but I quickly dismissed the thought. However, something about her cold and distant expression made me feel uneasy. I tried to strike up a conversation, but my attempts were met with a complete lack of response. The silence grew heavy, and there was a sense of discomfort in the air. As the car began to move, the driver remained silent, not even a customary greeting. We drove through dimly lit streets, going into unfamiliar roads. Panic started to rise within me as I glanced out the rainy windows, trying to make sense of our destination. Suddenly, the driver abruptly veered onto a winding road. My heart raced, and a surge of fear washed over me. I reached for my phone, my trembling fingers were struggling to dial for help. The car accelerated, racing along the narrow road. The tires screeched in the rain. Thoughts of danger flooded through my mind. Am I in danger? Just as terror consumed me, a bolt of lightning illuminated the road ahead. My eyes widened in horror as I saw a fallen tree, blocking our path. The driver slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded dangerously close to the obstruction before finally coming to a halt. Adrenaline was surging, and I unbuckled my seatbelt and flung open the car door. I darted out into the rainy night, leaving behind my bag and belongings. Through the darkness, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, and my heart nearly stopped. The driver from the car with wide eyes was following me. Without hesitation, I sprinted out of the trees, desperate for help. Finally, I reached the safety of a well-lit area. I waved frantically, catching the attention of a passing car. A few minutes later, a driver pulled over. I quickly explained to him what happened, and he offered me a ride to the nearest police station where I could report the incident. As I sat in the police station, I was providing my statement and all the information I know about this woman. I later found out that the female Uber driver had been involved in a string of similar incidents. She had deliberately targeted unsuspecting passengers, luring them into dangerous situations. They are unsure to what her motive was, but they suspected mental illness. From that moment on, I became much more skeptical about using rideshare services. The thought of sitting in a stranger's car and being at their mercy to take you somewhere had made me feel so powerless. I believe this was an isolated incident, but it didn't traumatize me any less. It was a clear night as I prepared to start my shift as an Uber driver. I hopped into my car, determined to make a living despite all the hardships of enduring night shifts. Little did I know that this particular ride would be unlike anything I had experienced before. A notification popped up on my phone, indicating a new passenger request. The pickup location was in a secluded area, but I figured someone must be stranded and in need of a ride. As I navigated the dark and winding roads, I couldn't help the sense of creepiness in this deserted area. It felt like I was walking into a situation from a horror movie. Finally, I arrived at the pickup location, a dimly lit street corner. Standing there was a man, shrouded in a long black coat, his face hidden beneath a hood. There was something off about him, an eerie energy that sent chills down my spine. Despite my unease, I reminded myself that appearances could be deceiving, and I had a job to do. The passenger climbed into the back seat, and his voice was a low, raspy whisper as he instructed me to drive. I tried to maintain a professional demeanor. The car was filled with an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the sound of rain pelting against the windows. As we drove through the streets, the passenger's behavior became increasingly peculiar. He seemed to be muttering to himself, his words incomprehensible and filled with an unsettling intensity. I stole glances at him through the rearview mirror, and what I saw gave me chills. His eyes were wild and filled with an unnatural gleam, as if he were possessed by something. Fear gnawed at my stomach, but I couldn't abandon the passenger in the middle of nowhere. I desperately tried to focus on the road ahead, but the passenger's strange mutterings grew louder and more frantic. The atmosphere grew suffocating, as if an invisible tension filled the air. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, the passenger let out a loud scream that pierced the silence. I swerved in shock, nearly losing control of the car. Panic surged through me as I desperately tried to maintain my composure. Something was terribly wrong with this man, and I needed to get him out of my car. I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands trembling. Turning to face the passenger, I mustered up all my courage and firmly demanded that he exit the vehicle. His eyes pierced into mine, filled with a mixture of rage and desperation. He refused to leave, his voice rising to a manic pitch. I realized I was dealing with a potentially dangerous situation. My mind raced, and I knew I had to take action. I quickly reached for my phone, pretending to make a call for help. The passenger, momentarily distracted, shifted his attention towards my actions. Seizing the opportunity, I unlocked the doors and bolted out of the car. I sprinted away, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and adrenaline. I never looked back, too afraid of what I might see. I eventually found refuge at a nearby gas station where I recounted the events to the attendants. They called the authorities, who assured me they would investigate the matter thoroughly. In the following days, news broke of a man fitting the description of my passenger who had been involved in a series of disturbing incidents. It turned out that he had been connected to a string of disappearances and unsolved crimes in the area. His victims, mostly women, had gone missing under mysterious circumstances. The authorities had been investigating these cases for months, desperately searching for any leads to bring the culprits to justice. He was apprehended by the police for further investigation since my incident. The relief was overwhelming, but the memory of that night would forever be etched in my mind. Please support me by smashing the like button and subscribing to my channel. Turn on all notifications for new upcoming videos.